All right, everybody. Very exciting times. Hope you guys have really enjoyed these sessions. This is leading us up to our final session of the day. I'm sure you guys' brains are overloaded with information, but this is a wonderful panel of some of the most incredible women in the music industry that I know. And I'm honored that they've decided to join us. Two of them join us for the second time. So this is going to be a talk about music research and some incredible music research that was done in 2021. This is going to be moderated by Charlie Wall-Andrews, and joining her to talk about their research is Michelle Yuen and Julie Knibbe. All right, and without further ado, I'm going to bring them up to talk.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
You sound great. Sorry, I was getting everyone out.
Wonderful. Yeah, as I was saying, it's wonderful to be here. Again, really great to be back. This is literally one of my favorite conferences because really we're building a community here, a global community at Measure of Music. And so congrats on having the second edition and for us to come together to talk about research. I really want to start it as, research is important. And one of the main purposes of research is to inform and gather evidence that shapes theories and contributes to knowledge of humanity and how we do, and to make strategic, practical choices. And perhaps from your personal experiences, what you're learning today, that it's really a tool. Research is a tool for building knowledge, facilitating learning. It's a true means to understand issues and even increase public awareness. And most of all, it helps us succeed in doing business or setting goals for ourselves in the work we do within community and so forth. So it's a very powerful mechanism. And so we're going to actually be looking at highlights of research done in the music industry throughout 2021 with independent research that really highlights how research matters in our sector. And I'm truly delighted that we'll be looking into Chartmetric's artist pronoun database and gender equity report, as well as Music Tomorrow's State of Data in the Music Industry report. So we have two wonderful speakers that are going to share those insights, and there will be a chance for questions as well. If your questions are specific, just indicate the speaker's name and the question, or if it's just general, feel free to take note and share as such, and we'll aim to get to it. But without further ado, I want to invite Michelle from Chartmetric to share some insights on the artist pronoun database and gender equity report.
Thanks, Charlie. It's really good to be here. And also, Charlie, I've seen you on other panels before, so it was really nice to be connected here. But yeah, I'm just gonna kind of dive straight into it and share my screen real quick. Let me see. Here, this. All right. Yeah, and thanks so much to Christine for having me back again this year as well. It's always good to be here. And it's a really nice community that she's curated at Measure of Music. So this is, so Make Music Equal is an initiative that is run by us at Chartmetric, but we do operate it kind of separate from the main platform because the whole point of the initiative is to further equity and equality in the industry. And we didn't feel like that is just something that it's just us doing. It's a community thing and everyone is pushing for that. And so that's why we do kind of, it's connected but separate at the same time. So the initiative is called Make Music Equal. That's why the first slide. And so essentially I'm just gonna run through how it started, what we've done so far, the results, which resulted in mainly the report that Charlie mentioned just now, but also anything else that has come out of it. And then I'll go quickly into what we'll be doing next, hopefully. So, so the reason we started was so a lot of people probably know that at Chartmetric, we place like a lot of emphasis on customer feedback. That's what really drives the platform a lot. And so at one point we were getting a lot of requests for a database to do reporting on DEI in the industry, diversity, equity, and inclusivity. And the point of the reporting was to then demonstrate how far the industry has come or hasn't, and what can be done next to keep the ball rolling and keep improving that for everyone. But as people are probably aware, like the main issue is that there wasn't really a database for that. There wasn't really a comprehensive publicly available data set that could be used. And so we figured that this is something that we could work on at our own cost as well. It's just something that we wanted to help further. And because we also talk a lot about how data brings transparency to industry and can help correct any imbalances that are previously existing. So this is really a starting point for future development. And it's very much a starting point, as you'll see as I go through it, because it was a pretty big task. I think that we didn't realize so much when we first started, and it's definitely an ongoing one as well. But yeah, there is a website that, like I said, is hosted slightly separately. So it's makemusicequal.chartmetric.com. And you can go there and check out everything that we've done, but I'm also going to run through it here. So that's why we started. There were people who were interested in doing like reporting on the state of dance and the state of equity in dance music, or like in hip hop or in different countries and so on. And so usually, even if we can't help people directly with data from Chartmetric, we would just direct you wherever it is available. We initially got some kind of gender data from Music Brains, and there's also some of this on Wikipedia as well, which is a data source for us too. But like I said, it's not very comprehensive, and I think largely focused on like individual artists, and then there was a lack of artists for bands, for lack of categorization for bands and stuff like that. So that's why we started building this. So we did a lot of research with like nonprofits, like that you've probably heard of, Women in Music, She's Music, and so on. She said so, talking to all these people and these collectives to try to get as much input as possible, because we didn't want this to exist in a vacuum. And like I said, it's more of a community project. And then also talking to people in the industry who were also supporters of this, and also, everyone wants to see it through. So that's when we found really that looking at gender data can be like even more sensitive, because it's not really public information. And we actually threw this talking to Christine, so shout out to her. And that's why we decided to look at pronouns in addition to gender. We do have a gender data set. It's just a lot smaller because it's not really public, but pronouns are generally just what you call people, and then there is like a gender component often attached to them, so you can use them that way. And so that's why we decided that let's go with what we have and that people use daily, which are the pronouns. So that's why we went with pronouns, and we have these two kind of joined data sets. And then the source for our data, by and large, is from artist biographies, because the assumption generally is that it's written, especially for bios that are, on DSPs, they are either written by the artist or by someone close to them. And so it's like most accurate representation of them that is possibly, again, public. So that's why we sourced from those biographies. And where'd you go? Yeah. So the reason I say this is a larger task than we probably thought is because there did require a lot of cleaning of the data. And so this is just a snapshot of what Shashank and Yuki, who are data analysts and data scientists, did to kind of clean up the bios to pick out the keywords where we could identify that as being pronouns. And so they have a whole kind of script that they've written up to separate things out. And this is just a sample of what it looks like, since I know a lot of you are also on the data side too. So there's a lot of cleaning of the text. And then we ran into like a roadblock where there are lots of bios that are not written in English, of course. It's not the only language. And so for us as a starting point, again, we decided to look into English first, because that's what like the majority of the team is fluent in, and we can work most easily in to begin with. And then next steps, hopefully, or like future iterations would be other languages. So this also requires a lot of research into how to separate this kind of thing out. And so that's why we did use like this lang detect package. It's a Python package. And then so you can use that to like identify the right language and then kind of extract the information into the proper language categories. So that was a roadblock. It took, we're probably about like a couple months at this time because we're also doing other things at the same time. But then getting to, getting to this point, we could filter out all the keywords. So basically extracted all the biographies that are in English language, and then we can start looking for keywords that would identify the pronouns that would correspond most to each artist. So this was also where we had a lot more conversation with communities and people in the industry of the correct pronouns to refer to people by, what is even available because the language is always evolving, and then how to integrate that and identify it in the bios. So that's what we did here. And then you can see kind of what we came up with initially. This has evolved over time. Also depends what is available in biographies. Not everybody uses certain ways to refer to themselves. And so we have to keep reviewing our tests, which is why I've underlined the test and retest section. I think that's a huge part of the research is that, you know, it's not going to be as smooth as you probably think it is. And then so we have to keep testing. And then from there, we could identify all of the pronouns in a biography and then count for the most frequently occurring one. And hopefully that would correlate to the pronoun that the artist actually uses and is the proper way to represent them. So you can see here, we've got a couple groups like bands, and we've got a couple male solo artists, and the count is highest for those categories corresponding to the artist. And then we wanted to check for accuracy as well, which was pretty important, especially with this data set because it is a sensitive area. And so what we did was we put in a lot of manual research. I know up until this data set being created, a lot of research that's been done around this area has been done manually. And this kind of categorization has been done manually, which is very time consuming. So, but with an automatic pull, we still had to have a way to check it somehow to make sure that we were on the right track. And so that's what we did. And we wanted to maintain a minimum accuracy of across the matching of at least 90%, again, because it's sensitive. And so that's what we did, and then wanted to still, like, with it being only in English, it wasn't as inclusive as we wanted it to be. So we did additional like manual research again, just to have this incorporated into the data set and to kick it off in a way that still involves as many parties as possible, because that was the whole point originally, to have a good measure across everybody of the state of like equity in the industry. And so that basically has resulted in this data set, which started off with around 494,000 artists that were matched with pronouns and or gender. And then we recently updated it. So we update this about every month because we do also allow people to update their own pronouns and gender identity on the platform. That was pretty important to us because you know, you may have your own way of representing yourself that may not be obvious in a biography. And so even though the biography is the closest we can get, the best would be self-reporting. And so that's why we have that available, and then update the database in general every month, because we made the data public to be shared and used by anyone on the internet who has access to the internet. Because again, it's a social project. It's not a project that we're doing to like make money or something like that. It's really to further the point of equity. And so all of these things that we've done are really to share it and to encourage other people to use it, to have a measure of diversity and equity in the music industry. And then hopefully by having a measure, it can keep track and then improve upon it. So the latest iteration of the database is about is now 611,000 or so artists, which is another 100,000 or so increase from last time, which is great. And then we have a tracker that keeps track. I will say with the tracker that we are focused on, the tracker right now isn't necessarily a measure of how the industry is developing so much as it is of how much data we can add to the data set, because we are still trying to make the data set robust first, but baby steps. And then there is a report that we did where we just took a look at pronoun and gender distribution across like playlists and charts and streaming platforms. And I think it was really interesting to see, for example, like one of the findings that I thought was interesting was for artists who are from the 2000s, there was a majority representation of artists using like she, her pronouns, so likely to be female acts. And then that's kind of shifted more to 50-50 and then even leaning more male, he, him at the moment. But I thought it was interesting that that was a representation back then. And we can see how the industry kind of ebbs and flows around that. So in addition to our own reporting, we've also had a lot of conversations with other people as we've built this out who are interested in doing research and reporting. And that's everyone from independent publications, press, all the way up to like major streaming platforms and major streaming platforms and also major labels as well. So really everyone across the industry is interested in this, and giving everyone a place to start looking at it, I think is the major idea here.
This is very insightful. Time is passing by. So
yeah.
I'll let you wrap up this wonderful presentation and we'll move to Julie.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm just wrapping this up here. So essentially, like next steps, we're hoping to open it up to more languages. And we've also gotten a lot of questions about race and ethnicity, which is even, I'd say, even more difficult to get access to in terms of like public information. But if anyone has any ideas on this, whether it's the current data set or any expansion to it, like please do reach out to us at equity@chartmetric.com, and then we can always work on it together, because again, that's really the point of it. Even though we started it from the company view, it's really to work with everyone together. So thanks, Charlie.
Wonderful presentation, and we'll come back to some questions momentarily. Julie, over to you.
Hey everyone, thanks a lot for hosting me. Just sharing my screen as well. Can you all see? Great. So yeah, here tonight to share results of a survey we ran last autumn about the state of data in the music industry. So I'm the CEO of Music Tomorrow. We are a music data consultancy. We are writing and sharing best practices around how music professionals leverage data in their daily jobs. And actually the goal of this research that we ran was to assess the level of data proficiency in the music industry, because we are all there because we assume that's a critical part of actually doing the job. But we wanted to keep track of how the practices of moving forward and create a record of how and why music professionals engage with data. So what we did, and that's actually the first batch, and we plan to run it yearly to measure how the practices evolve. We had about 72 companies answering the survey that we ran across all verticals of the industry, from major independent record labels, distributors, publishers, PROs, a couple of startups, and more. And all that companies panel represent about 25,000 music professionals from all over the industry. So without further ado, I'll be quick so we have time for Q&A later. But as no surprise, data analytics are weekly practice for 95% of people surveyed. That changed a lot over the past couple of years. So where that used to be questioned and where people would rather follow intuition, sometimes now data is really at the heart, core center of doing the job. And among those 95, actually 48% read data on a daily basis. So it's not only weekly, depending on the vertical. So we'll see how that can vary from one vertical to the other. But for half of them, it's the daily practice. So what are they doing daily? So most of them, and it's nice to have Michelle here because most of them would use third-party dashboards, and they are the most widespread analytic solutions with Chartmetric leading the pack, sound charts, and other data tools and analytics available on the market. And they have, we estimated that they have about 60% penetration rate on the market. So for the rest, so that daily practice is for most record labels and especially marketing jobs, very much focused on Chartmetrics and other analytics solutions. But a lot of professionals highlighted the lack of specialized and tailored insights to run their business properly. So that's why they plan to increase their budgets to develop their own custom in-house solutions to complement what's already available in the market. So 2/3 of them plan to actually increase their budget. None of them plan to decrease the budget, obviously. And that extra budget is meant to increase the development and to develop custom data solutions. So most of them in record labels is mostly to have their own custom business intelligence tools. So to have, like, you may have some insights from a third-party analytics dashboard, but you want to cross-reference that with your own proprietary data. So they wouldn't have their own BI operations on the publishing business. You have a lot of processing revenue streams, things like that. To no surprise as well, where the resources are the most invested to develop the most advanced data solutions are among the majors. So the big three are leading the charts in terms of how they, when it comes to how they develop and how they leverage the most advanced technology regarding developing custom solutions and leveraging AI in their daily operations. So they would, they plan and are already investing in a lot of data science to, the most common use case would be predictive analytics. So forecasting, whether that's revenue or forecasting any kind of success, whether that's in the live industry, predicting ticket sales or predicting audience growth on the recording side, for example. But to sort of counterbalance everything I just said, everyone is not equal in terms of how able they are to leverage data. And I have a special thought for the publishing industry that's plaguing with metadata issues. And they have a lot of matching. So to run the same level of analysis that a record label can do, they have tons of extra work to get down to the work level. So especially in the publishing industry, we can see as well that they're still using spreadsheets a lot. That's also true among record labels, but in the publishing side as well, more than 2/3 are still using spreadsheets as their main data, if I may, tool. But solving those meta-related challenges, actually for them is a big question, because in terms of revenue, it may translate to 6 figures revenue missed in some cases. So that's about the main insights. So of course, you can download the whole report online to get the full details about that. We are launching a few programs to help share those best practices. So actually today we just launched our e-learning platform. So I just shared the coupon for those who want to try it out and give us feedback. So be welcome, and that's that.
Fantastic. These were great presentations. So thank you so much, Michelle and Julie. For those of you that have questions, if you don't mind sharing them, and we'll put those into the queue. But I have a couple to get things going. First of all, I have to emphasize again, this was extraordinary. I'm going to go to Michelle first, and I'm curious about, so you've shared this wonderful report on how basically giving insight into equity through the methodologies you've used through Chartmetric. And I'm wondering, what do you hope people will do or change given the findings that you have identified?
Yeah, thanks, Troy. That's a good question. I think that when we, at least my hope is usually when we do research, is that there's a practical outcome from it. And so I think really the aim is to have a good measure in the first place of equity. And this is mainly focused on artists at the moment because that's what the platform has as well. But there hasn't really been any measure prior. And so I think having this measure will then allow, for example, like nonprofits. I know there's been a lot of work done in country music surrounding, the female community there, but it's hard to ask people to make a change when they don't even know what they're changing for. And so I think that's the idea really behind having this. We're just hoping to create the data set. We're happy to raise awareness and promote everything as much as possible. And then we do some analytics from time to time, but it's really to push it forward to other people to make use.
Fantastic. And I like this. When you create that baseline, then you could only hold yourself accountable to grow up from there. So wonderful. Thank you. And Julie, I'm wondering, so you've shared really wonderful insights. What's next? What do you expect future research to look like in the communities that you're engaging with and working on?
I mean, just like we've remained at a very generic level.
Yeah.
So there are so many investigations to run that now what we are going to see is, I think, more focused research. Focused research on, because the music industry as a whole actually has a lot of different components. So there needs to be research specialized on the publishing side. On the live industry side is usually underserved as well because of the data collection issues, and the publishing side. And I'd like to see more of that covered.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm curious to take a peek at some of the toolkits that you were talking about on the platform, because we even see in the institutions, academic institutions, that they're starting to take, I guess, measuring of music or just factoring in data analytics more seriously. Like I can say when I went to school and even teaching at the university, this was not in the curriculum last year, and now it's starting to be part of the conversation. So it's important to have this research to build upon, and these toolkits can be a really great pathway forward for industry to leverage and the next generation, especially knowing that it's such a huge part of our everyday life, 95%. Absolutely. And yeah, so that's wonderful. I'm curious to see if there are any questions in the chat. Give me one moment. Okay, perfect. So we do have a question here for Julie. What type of metadata music companies are struggling with, and why is this so important for them? So they 71% want to invest in it. Actually, that's
mostly a publishing industry issue. And the metadata issue they have is that on the digital space, if I take an example in the digital space, most streaming platforms would declare what's happening on the platform and the number of the revenue and streams at the record level. And then it's up to the PROs and the collecting societies to find the underlying work for master to be able to pay the songwriters. So that matching that they have to do between masters and works is actually a tough one. Because they're supposed to be unique identifiers like ISRCs and ISWCs. But in real life, the same work can have up to 1,000 ISRCs and tens or even hundreds of ISWCs. So the industry is plagued with metadata issues, and things that are supposed to be unique aren't usually, and then requires a lot of cleaning that collecting societies have to do. But if we think about analytics and business intelligence, then if you want some intelligence about how your catalog or your works are performing, you have to do that job as well. And right now that field is really underserved.
Wonderful. I'm going to go to the next question. And I'm just going to say, if we don't get to all of them, you know how to reach out to our speakers here. It's on the platform, and maybe they'll put their best contact information in the chat again. So I'm going to go to the next question, which is from Luke, which is, how do you go about cleaning and creating data pipelines for your clients as a consultant? And maybe we can go to Michelle, because you provided a lot of insight on cleaning the data.
Yeah, it's not fun. It's very messy. I mean, Julie was just talking about it, and it's all over the place because it depends what you're cleaning for as well. Like in our instance, we were cleaning for specific keywords, so they had to remove all like punctuation, and in the case of English, at least, they removed special characters. Right now, like we're working on Spanish, and they do have accents and all sorts of additional characters, and so it's very specific to what you're looking for. And I would say the same, whether it's in publishing or, more specifically metadata like ISRCs and UPCs. There are so many duplicates. Julie just mentioned that there are also, we've seen there are multiple ISRCs for the same track. And for us, it's like, why don't you just have one? But they have their own ideas about why, they have multiple. And then it's what people are looking for specifically, because we've also had questions to like, merge all the ISRCs for one track so you can track everything just for like one overall, but then some people don't want to. Yeah, and that's why I think a lot of people have custom solutions, and I think that's also why there's a lot of like independent work being done.
Awesome, thank you so much. We have another question for Julie from Andak, which is, do you think one of the reasons people still don't know what to do with data is the lack of understanding of the DSP ecosystem and algorithms?
I would say partly yes. Not only that, because right now the level of data solutions that we have is very descriptive. So you know what's happening, but that's true that you don't necessarily know what to do about it. And to know what to do about it, then you have to either cross-reference it with your own data, with your own, for example, for record label, you will have to cross-reference it with your own marketing campaigns to understand if you see a bump somewhere, is that because of a radio spin somewhere, or did you promote things live? So you have to have your own intelligence on top of what's presented to you. And the more we will move forward with more specialized and advanced solutions, because if you're a marketer or an A&R or a booker, you don't need to see the same thing. And right now, sort of everybody has the same tool, so you cannot super serve everyone with the same thing. So the part of what we don't know what to do about it is because we are on the verge of specializing the solutions more. And when that happens, then it's going to become even more actionable. And yeah, I personally also fight my own battle in terms of trying to make people understand how the streaming ecosystem works so that people can make the best of it. That's actually the first class that I created, is how algorithms work on streaming platforms, to debunk all the myths that we hear about that.
Thank you. Let's go to, all right, this is a question from Sarah for Michelle. How much input do individual artists have in correcting or removing pronoun data?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as much input as you want to have. We have, I didn't have it up just now, but basically if you go on the website, the Make Music Equal website, there is a form there where you can fill out your own preferences, and then we'll just update that for you on Chartmetric directly. If you are using the platform already, you can also update it there, and it is available whether you're a free or a paid user. It doesn't matter as long as you're able to log into the platform with an account. You can go in and change it. You can change the gender and you can change the pronouns. You can also change whether it's a solo artist or a group like a band or something. We've tried to include as many options as possible. There is on the gender side like male, female, non-binary, and then there's a whole list of non-binary. There's also just a prefer not to identify. And then on the pronoun side as well, you have the more common like he, she, they. You can also, there's a custom field. You can write whatever you want. And those go into a request list that I check. And the only reason I check it is to make sure that people aren't messing around with it, which has happened, which is why I do check it. This was also a request from a lot of the nonprofits, the collectives, the communities that we talk to make sure that there is some kind of integrity maintained there. And so that's why, but I don't check it as long as the custom submission is something like rather reasonable. And I've seen people write God, and I was like, let's maybe not, and just try to, and also because we can see who submitted it. So if I'm not sure about something, I'll just reach out and be like, hey, just wanted to double check that, this is what you intended. And if it is, that's fine. And if you don't reply to me, then I might assume that you're just playing around, which has happened. And then, that's why, because if people are using this for research and for measuring and for keeping track, we have to maintain some kind of reliability and accuracy.
Absolutely. So I'll ask one more quick question to each of you before we wrap up, which is, what advice would you give to others looking to pursue research into 2022 and beyond? One piece of advice that you would share as we close down this wonderful workshop or panel discussion that we've had together today. I'm like, okay, mic toss here. Why don't we go to Julie, and then we'll close it with Michelle.
I think my advice would be pretty basic, but really prior to doing anything else, really state clearly your research questions, because it's so easy to, to want to ask everything, get a lot of insight, get a lot of data, but then that's very common, just get lost in it, because there's so many things that you can learn from research. So back to the basics, just state the answer, the question that you want answers for.
I'm just kind of similar to Julie, but from the kind of opposite end, which is, I think if you have an idea of what you want to do, go from your big picture and then reverse backwards, because at least personally, I try to aim, like I said, for the research to have like a practical use out of it. It's not like every single time there has to be some kind of actionable result, but like, what are we looking at this for? And so if you have that there, then you can work backwards. Otherwise, like she said, you're just kind of floating in the mass of research and analysis, and you could go in all sorts of directions. Or you could go down a rabbit hole and then come out with nothing at the end, which has happened before as well. So just trying to, apply some focus.
That is wonderful. And, I'll say as well, building on these 2 points, know your audience, right? Your research question, know your audience. You're talking about practical implications here, Michelle. And then also, once you have something, knowledge dissemination, share it with the community, just like what these folks have done, right? Share that knowledge, get the conversations going, and always build on future research, because it's an ongoing process, right? So I want to say thank you to you two for sharing these incredible insights. I'm so excited to see what you'll continue to do. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Charlie, and thanks, Julie, as well. I think she just popped off, but it was good to be here with both of you.
Now over to Christine.
It was wonderful to see all of you lovely ladies tonight. Thank you so much for closing out our programming. I'm gonna let you guys go. Thank you again. Really appreciate it, both of you. Oh, and one more thing. If you want to hear a bit more from Michelle, she's going to be in one of our info booths tomorrow during the networking session in the late session. So you'll get to chat a bit more with her, ask her all about how she got her job and all kinds of other fun stuff. All right. Thank you, ladies. Have a great
Thanks, Christine.
day. Bye.